Hello YouTube, welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how to create a data store to save players' data in your game. So as you can see here on my base play, if you go ahead and click the play button, as you can see my cache is loaded from when I was testing this out. And if you go ahead and click on this part, you'll notice that our cache goes up by 1. And if we go ahead and stop the server, you notice that our data will save. Now if we load back into the game, you will see that our data saved and it's loaded into the next game. So before we begin the tutorial, we're going to want to make sure that we actually enable data stores in the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to the Home tab, select Game Settings, and then under the Security tab we're going to make sure that we have Enable Studio Access to API Services. And once you've enabled this, we can begin the tutorial. So let's begin by creating a new script inside of this script service, and let's go ahead and name this main or leaderstats, whatever you want. Now we're going to need a couple variables. The first one's going to be datastore. So let's go ahead and get the datastore service, and then we're also going to use a function named getDataStore, and this is going to be the name of our data store. I'm just going to be using tutorial. The next variable we're going to need is going to be the players. So let's go ahead and get that as well. So now we're going to create a couple functions. The first one's going to be save data, and we're going to need the player variable. And the second function is going to be load data, and we're also going to need the player variable here. So now we're going to want to get when the player is joining the game, and we're going to go ahead and name the player. And now we're going to want to call in the load data function with the parameter player. We're going to do the same thing with player removing as well, except this time we're going to call the function save data. Now the last thing we're going to need for functions and stuff like that is going to be game : bind and close. And now this is going to be a little complicated. What we're going to be doing is looping through all the players and calling the save data function, so that whenever the server shuts down for any reason, before it shuts down, all the data is saved, and then the server shuts down. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to loop through players : get players, and now all we have to do is just call the save data function with the parameter v. So the first function we're going to work on is going to be the loading data function. So obviously we're going to need leaderstats, so let's go ahead and create that. If you guys don't know how to do this, just watch my video that I made on it. I'll have it in the description. And yeah. But if you guys don't feel like watching it, you guys can just copy along. We're gonna create a cache leaderstats. So and we're just gonna name this cache as well. And so now we're going to actually work on loading the data. So we're going to want to wrap this in a pcall. And if you guys don't know what a pcall is, I can pull this up for you guys really quickly. As you can see right here, it basically just is like a try catch. It tries the code, and if it doesn't work, it returns something, and you can go ahead and do whatever you want with what it returns. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to say if not success, then we're going to want to go ahead and warn there was an error loading the data, and we're going to want to pass in the error. Now the reason why we actually give the error the name of ERR is because if we were to do error, it's actually a built-in function in Lua, which basically just it's the same thing as print or warn, but instead it displays it in red text. And so with data storage, you're going to need a key, which is what it saves the data underneath. So obviously we're going to want to make that. We're going to name it player underscore, and then since we passed in the player argument up here, we can go ahead and just say player.userid. Now you might be wondering, why do we do player.userid instead of just player.name? Now obviously player.name will work the same except the only problem with that is if the player changes his name, his data gets reset. So instead we use player.userid because the user ID never changes. So now we're going to go ahead and get the data. We can do this by making a function named data and using the function datastore get async, and then we're just going to use the key that we provided here, and it'll basically return the table of data that we give it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say if data, so it's basically making sure the player has data. Then we're going to want to say cache.value equals data 1. And now this will work with whatever you put in here. And if you guys wanted to add more, for example, let's say local gems equals instance.new int value. Let's have leaderstats. Now let's just name this gems. And then we would have to do gems.value equals data 2. And you guys can see where I'm going with this. You can basically just add as many values as you want into one data store and just add it down here and you're good to go. And that should be all with this function. Now at the bottom here, we're going to want to actually change this warn into a return so that it ends the code after that. And if that code's never ran, then we're going to say data loaded successfully. And that's going to be it for the load data function. Now let's work on the save data function. So like before with the load data function, we're going to want to wrap this in a pcall function just in case there's any errors. Again, we're going to want the key, so it's going to be player underscore player.user ID. And then we're going to say local data equals, and then in this we're going to give it a table. And obviously if we look into our load data function, you see how it says data 1 and data 2. Data 1 is going to be the cache.value, data 2 is going to be gems.value. So we're going to pass in cache.value and then gems.value. So what we're going to do is we're going to say player.leaderstats.cache.value. And as the second value, we're going to put player.leaderstats.gems.value. And so now, finally, we're going to want to say datastore set async key data. And then once again, we're going to say if not success, then we're going to want to go ahead and return warn. There was an error loading data. And then down here, we're going to say, there was an error saving data. And then we're going to say there was an error saving data. Again, we're going to want to pass through the error. And also, before we test this, I'm going to name the data store testing because I don't want it to collide with the other data that I created. And also, I made a mistake on the save data function where it says there is an error saving data. I accidentally said there was an error saving data. We're just going to say data saved successfully. So now if we go ahead and test our game, and as you can see, we have cache and gems. So if we go ahead and go to the server and we change the player's cache value to say 1000 and maybe their gems value to 100, if you go back to the client, you see that's changed. And if we stop the server here and then we go ahead and load it back in, you will notice that our data is now saved. Now with that newly gained knowledge, I hope you guys create a nice game. Make sure to join my Discord server, it's in the link in the description, and make sure to subscribe and like. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.